What's up, everybody? You know the deal. Just hit like and hit subscribe, and let's get after it. Hi, hello, and welcome to your favorite Average Good podcast. Call it what you want. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Tony Meola, and at some points, Charlie Davies will be joining us. We're going to talk about the U.S. Open Cup final, the Campeones Cup that happened between Columbus Crew and Club America, and we're going to have a mailbag special. We're going to answer your questions. We already have some baked in. People ask us some questions on other platforms of their choice. Hit us up at Gloss of America next time. But you can hit us up in the chat here on the YouTubes, and it should be a lot of fun. I don't know what direction these questions are going to take us in, but they're going to be awesome. Did you watch the Open Cup final last night, Big Tones?
Did I watched every minute until I don't know, what was it, 4 o'clock in the morning when it was over here in the East Coast? At least that's what it felt like. Dude, I was praying for somebody to score a goal in regulation. As much as I was rooting for Sporting Kansas City, our old club, and we won that cup there.
We won it 20 years ago, Tones. 20 years ago.
No, well, don't say that. Don't say it like that. At least
two
like that.
decades
20,
ago.
Yeah. That's 2. It sounds better than 20. Yeah, but it was I love the game, man. 2 teams that went after each other, and it was a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, I watched every single minute of the game before that that we're going to talk about with the Columbus Crew and this match as well.
Yeah, with regard to Open Cup, I was there. It was fun. Somebody gave me a call it what you want shout out. So I didn't get his name, but thank you for giving us that love and for listening to the show. But LAFC ended up winning. For those that don't know, they won 3-1 in extra time. So it was 1-1 after regulation, and then LAFC pulled away. They just looked a little bit more fresh in extra time, and KC got a little run down, I thought, especially in midfield in that second half and definitely into extra time, and LAFC go on to win their first ever Open Cup. So congratulations to them and to Steve Cherundolo. They had lost 4 previous finals going into that, so I think there were a lot of nerves, there were a lot of on edge. In Kansas City, when they went down 1-0 and Olivier Giroud scored, I think it was offside, but the angle that I was at in the stadium, I don't know. And then I don't see any replays.
It looked it to me. Yeah, they showed obviously Jimmy a replay, but it's like in the wrong angle, and it's so I'm imagining you can't change it on that, but it, like, if you started drawing lines and got your ruler out, you're like, man, that just looked offside to me. I don't know that it would have made. I mean, it makes a difference, obviously. I don't know if it changes the result in the end,
sure.
But yeah, it did look offside. But again, if you don't have the right camera angle, they can't make a change.
Yeah, they can't. And a lot of questions there, especially from Sporting Kansas City fans. I want to say that the Cauldron, the one of the fan groups, the biggest fan group of the team, came out in numbers. I don't know how many were there, but it had to be at least 1,000 people came. Maybe that sounds like a lot, but maybe it's not. There was so many Kansas City fans there, and I was one of them supporting our former club. I got to say hi to Peter Vermes and Kerry Zavagnin before the game, and I thought they were up for it. They ended up coming back like 5 minutes after they gave up a goal. Eric Tommy scores a very good goal to make it 1-1.
Yeah.
And it felt like everything to play for. And then when it got into extra time, it just felt like LAFC from that point forward. Oh, look who decided this show. Hey, come in when you want. That's the new name of the show. Come in when you want, Chuck. Oh, now he doesn't even have his audio.
Yeah, just unmute yourself. It helps on these podcasts.
How about a round of applause, because I've been up since 6 a.m. and I'm doing this gauntlet. Morning Footy, Golazo Show, to call it what you want. How about just some little respect?
Hey.
Be like, hey, great to see you.
Nobody feels bad that you
we saw you all day. We've been seeing you the whole day.
Yeah. Nobody feels bad for you, Chuck.
All right, fine.
All right, so we're talking LAFC Sporting Kansas City Open Cup final. What were your thoughts overall? Did you feel like, because you had LAFC winning 3-0, I think, in our preview show for that.
Yeah.
Did you feel like LAFC were the deserved winners of that game?
I do. I also want to give credit to Sporting Kansas City, because they played like this was their season, and it was, because they're eliminated from the playoffs. So the belief that, hey, if we defend as a team, if we work hard, that we can frustrate LAFC, and that, they did take it extra time. That's pretty impressive to be able to do that in LA. But at the same time, kind of what I said on Morning Footy is, I have so much respect for Peter Vermes and the $1 billion goal, seeing him kind of with you, Tony Meola, being a part of that generation to grow the game in this country, to then transition into, he was my youth coach with the under-20 national team with when Ziggy Schmidt was the head coach. So you had Marcelo Balboa and Peter Vermes coming in to help around, John Harkes. And then from there, yes, I mean, give the man credit for building what he's built at Sporting Kansas City and winning an MLS Cup in 2013 and really turning Kansas City into a soccer city. I give him so much credit. But now we're at a point where MLS is taking the next step, and it's his time to move on. Because
there's no way coming.
I'll tell you right now.
Setup, Big Tones. He was really massaging.
I'm telling you, no, but seriously, he's a sporting director and he's a head coach. And since he fired Kurt Anolfo, he took that interim job and just ran with it. But at one point, you can't just say, okay, Peter Vermes, you're just going to be the sporting director if he wants to coach. And you're not going to say, we're going to hire you a boss, and you were the boss. You are everything, and now you're just going to coach. Because I said on Morning Footy, once a king, never a prince. It just doesn't work. You know that. So this is the time for Sporting Kansas City to say, hey, we're going to usher in a new generation. Because the team needs to clear out. There's a lot of players who are, I'd say, well past their prime, who have been loyal to Sporting Kansas City. Great. Find a way to have them still be involved with the club if they don't want to continue to play on. But now is a time for them to move on. And LA, well, job well done. You got the trophy. And for Kai Kamara, what an incredible way to put an exclamation point to win that trophy against what he felt was his hometown club. And I thought that was a shot at Peter Vermes, was now I found my home. Like, you always love KC, Kai. Come on, you're not fooling anybody.
I was there in KC with Kai, and I gave Kai a big hug on the field last night after the game, and he was definitely highly motivated to score and to have an impact on that game. That's all I'm gonna say. He was excited that he could get that one last shot against the former club, who I don't think he thought treated him very well on the way out. Okay, so congratulations to LAFC. Let's pivot to Campeones Cup. I didn't even know that was happening. So for everybody that doesn't know, the Campeones Cup is the champion of Mexico. Now they have 2 seasons, right? Down there, they have the fall and the spring, and so Club America was the Campeone de la Campeones de los Campeones, and they took on Columbus Crew, who won MLS Cup last year, and it was in Columbus. And Columbus, it was 1-1 after regulation, goes to penalties, and Columbus ends up losing in penalties. Club America wins their first Campeones Cup. I find it interesting that this is happening the same night as the U.S. Open Cup final. Now, I was there on the field. I saw Don Garber at the Open Cup final last night in L.A. I thought he would be at Campeones Cup because that would make sense, because it felt like that's more MLS-centric than how they've been treating the Open Cup. So that was very interesting. Thoughts on this, Big Tones? The Campeones Cup happening at the same time? I mean, I like the competition. The champion of Mexico taking on the champion of MLS. Yeah. No problem with that. Just competing head-to-head with Open Cup just felt a little weird.
Yeah, it really does. Obviously, they weren't at the same time, so from a viewership standpoint, you could watch both of them like I did. Sure. But yeah, you don't want to take attention away from what we all think, the three of us at least think, is the biggest competition in the U.S., right? And I don't want to say the most important, because I think in so many ways, MLS Cup has become like the competition to win for all these teams, right? And for good reason. But I never want to get rid of the U.S. Open Cup. This year killed me. I talked about it on the radio for 3 months. It was like, finally, shut up, Tony, because we got to get over this thing. But the reality is, it means a lot to us. You and I won it. It's a trophy that has our owner's name on it, right? The Lamar Hunt, when he was alive, I mean, this guy is the fabric of U.S. soccer. He held the league together with 2 other owners when the league was going to go under. To think that not everyone has the chance to play in this thing kind of kills me, but they made a decision, so that's what we had to go with this year, right? So we just kind of go with it and fight for next year. And you mentioned Kai Kamara. I don't know if you guys saw his comments, Charlie, after the game. He pretty much put Don Garber to the sword, man, and said, look around. This tournament is incredible. I'm paraphrasing, and you guys could go look at the full quote. But he pretty much gave it to Don Garber and said, you can't do this to the Open Cup. And as much as I enjoyed the game, in a lot of ways, I enjoyed that, I enjoyed that part equally as much, if you will, right? Because we did that tournament such a disservice this year. I get there's things that have to improve. I understand. But not being in the tournament for these MLS teams, guys, is not improving it.
So Chuck, now me and Tony are Open Cup winners. I know you just thought about winning the Open Cup once. Chuck, no reaction. No reaction, everybody. Try to trigger him early here without using the chat. But what I want to say about what I think makes the Open Cup special, amongst all the reasons that we've talked about, but it's the one tournament. It's the one activity, event, whatever you want to call it, where every single soccer club in this country has a chance to be a part of it. If we talk about MLS, USL teams can't participate in that, right? And so they're not part of that conversation. So those markets and their fans don't feel like they're part of whatever the top league is. But the Open Cup, everybody's a part of it. So when it was cast aside and like kind of treated like sloppy seconds by MLS, it just like, what are we doing, man? We should be all thinking about growing the game together and not just you guys are growing it over here in one area and then the rest of us are left to grow it over here. So that's why it's special. And I'm glad Kai said something to him. And I was surprised that Don Garber was there because once I heard the Campeones Cup was going on, it just made sense that he would have been at that instead. But Chuck, your thoughts on this stuff?
I think MLS realizes that this needs to be a part of MLS competition. That you can't just take history of this country and this sport and Major League Soccer being a part of it since it's been incepted in 1996 and just get rid of it and have it have no relevance or importance. So I think him showing up at the US Open Cup final is a good thing. Because by
the way, when he announced his name, the boos were off the charts.
Were they?
I do think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Don't you think that MLS understands the gravity of it now? Given
I hope so.
The blowback from everyone and also LAFC, one of your biggest clubs, says no. We prioritize this. We're playing in it, and you have Olivier Giroud, who's arguably one of your poster child players in the leagues. You know, also showing that he wants to win this trophy and how big it is, and taking pictures with his family, and that to me shows, hey, you need to prioritize this competition.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm here. I'm with you on that. So we'll see. We'll see did they say they were going to come out and have a statement soon about the Open Cup in the future? Maybe at the end of the season, they're going to talk about it a little bit more.
Well, I talked to Don Garber at the MLS All-Star game. I interviewed him prior to the game on the radio, and he essentially doubled down on it and said, look, there's things that need to improve, like for our teams to go. And I'm thinking, like I said before, I get there's things to improve. There's things to improve in MLS too. There's things to improve with the national team too. That doesn't mean we just duck out of everything.
Right.
Right. Like, okay, but improving it, well, we'll be better off with MLS teams in it, right? And really, Jimmy, all they really needed to do, and US Open Cup has to take a little bit of blame on this. All they needed to really do is open up the rosters a little bit and allow these second team players or MLS next players to float through the roster. So if LAFC or anybody else said, hey, I don't want to play my first team here, or I don't want to play my subs, I want to play a bunch of young guys, well, let me expand the roster a little bit and we'll do that. So that's your choice to make. And then we know that's always everybody's choice to make in these things. We see it in the FA Cup, how people look. Heck, Pep Guardiola just said yesterday in the EFL Cup, he said, I just want you to know this tournament doesn't mean anything to me, right? Like I'm playing the youngest team I could possibly play. So that's Pep's choice. So it should be every manager's choice. But what did we have? 8 teams in it this year? Was it 8 or am I missing a couple?
No, I think
it was around 8, right?
Yeah.
So not everybody had that choice to do that. And if you lose, you lose. That's your problem. You're out of the tournament. If you continue to win, then you keep playing. But they took the choice right out of everybody's hands.
All right. So lots to get into with the Open Cup, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it, and very curious to see how MLS approaches it moving forward, especially the next iteration. We're going to continue the show, though, and we're having a mailbag episode like we had mentioned before. So get your questions in if you're in the chat right now. We already have some, as I mentioned at the start of the show. We had some baked in from some people asking on different platforms. We're excited to get into those. It's a really tough one to start, which means that we're going to have Chuck answer it first. But we're going to get to our first break and call it what you want. When we return, that very first question. Hello, and welcome back to Call It What You Want. I'm Jimmy alongside Chuck and Big Tones. And the first question, Chuck, for our mailbag, I want to see if this triggers you. It's a good one. And it says this: when people say 2026 has the opportunity to change the course of soccer development in the United States, what do you think the actual impact can be? Like, in what way does how well the United States do in the 2026 World Cup, knockout round, quarterfinal, or just playing with heart, influence the outcome of this development?
I think it speaks for itself. It's the money invested in the sport. It's the sponsorships. It's the interest. Youth soccer, I'd say across the country is the involvement is pretty high. Most kids play youth soccer. At least they try it out. So from that standpoint, I think all parents know, oh, this is great for our kids to try, but they don't necessarily know much depth when it comes to how should my child end up, taking the right path to maybe potentially playing, professionally or collegiately, whatever it is. And I think when the U.S. men's national team does well in the World Cup and generally gets the country behind it, like we saw in '94, there's a wave of new coaches that come into play. There's a wave of new clubs that come into play. There's a wave of attention that's needed to grow the sport, which means investment in youth development. And again, MLS will benefit from that. USL will benefit from that. NWSL will benefit from that.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone wins. So the better the U.S. men's national team does, the better it is for the sport in our country.
I think to piggyback on that, and I love that thought a lot, is the visibility of the tournament. I think all of us can look back and say where we were when we first got introduced to the World Cup and what it meant to us. For me, I watched 90. I was, I don't even want to say it out loud, but I was 12 or 13 in 90. and yeah, I'm catching games on like grainy televisions at the local pizza joint, right? So you're not really making out who's who, but you're excited the U.S. is playing in it and getting to see Big Tones. I had Big Tones, but I don't know if I've told you this, Big Tones, but I had a photo of you up on my wall, so you have that.
Really?
And then a whole bunch,
nice.
Desmond Armstrong.
You were drinking out of a water fountain. Is the one that he has.
That's my favorite Landon Donovan photo of all time.
It was not me, Chuck.
And then in 94, the tournament was there and it was real, right? And even though I didn't go to any games, I got to I lived not too far from the Rose Bowl, so go to Old Town Pasadena, and so many fans were out and about and just got to get like the culture and the feel and how important it was to so many people. And that started to lay a really important foundation and planted a nice seed for me as to, hey, I kind of like this sport. And I like the impact that it has on people. And maybe I'll keep being more serious about this direction and committing more time to getting better at it. Tones, what World Cup stood out for you?
Yeah, well, I think 94 was the springboard, right? 94, yeah. If I had a nickel for every time still today, Jimmy, that someone says to me, man, I got turned on to the game in 1994, right? Like it's incredible how many people it touched, and I can't imagine what the impact of this tournament is going to be. And I think that when we talk about development, I think that the one thing that you will see is that just more kids will be involved, right? More kids. You'll have athletes. Look, the sport really wasn't, and MLS has done a good job in this regard, really wasn't attractive to young kids for so many different reasons. But one of them was like, you didn't have guys talking about $2 million contracts and $5 million you know what I mean? Like it, and I hate talking about that because I love the game so much. But let's face it, I have kids and I know what they think, and you have to get kids attracted somehow that there's an end game to it, right? For them, if they're going to continue to play it. And that's what 94 did for quite some time. And that's what 2026 will do as well. It'll give kids like a dream and a hope that, hey, I can get to this point. Like I didn't even know this point existed, right? This is going to be in your face. If I remember what 94 was like, we were a World Cup country. Like it may have been only for a 2-month period, like a couple of weeks leading up and then, a couple of weeks after the World Cup. But I mean, I've been to World Cups. I've covered them. And we were as much like the cities were packed with jerseys and hotels with guys having fans having parties and singing songs in the street. Now you're gonna have 48 teams, and I think we only had 24 teams in that World
24.
Cup.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. And
Yep.
yes,
Yeah,
so you
with the
got
third
double
place
the teams coming here to support the World Cup. Like, it's going to be wild. But in our case, we have to continue to get the kids at the lowest level interested in being great at the game and not going to, we've got the challenges of football and baseball and basketball and every other sport in this country, which other countries don't have. So that's our challenge, is to get kids interested in the game.
I think, to what you were saying before, Chuck, and to link what you're saying now, Tones, it's that momentum that you get from having a World Cup. And the longer you can hang out in the tournament, the longer that momentum builds. I remember in the 2022 World Cup, U.S. gets out of their group, they play the Dutch. But from getting out of the group to playing the Dutch is 4 or 5 days. Those 4 or 5 days are massive because everybody back home is talking about the team. And we're talking, even the knuckleheads that don't follow soccer are like, did you see the U.S. play? Did you see Christian Pulisic put his balls on the line to score against Iran? Like everybody's talking about the team, and you have that momentum. And if they had beaten the Dutch and had another 5 more days, I feel like it extrapolates, right? It just starts to build on top of itself. So the longer of a run we can have in 2026, the more opportunity you're going to get into get to some eyeballs that maybe hadn't seen it before, or going to watch for the first time because we are making history or whatever the type of run that we're on. So yes, it's really important that we don't crash out too soon. No pressure, guys. And Mauricio Pochettino. All right, next question. Coming back to you, Chuck. This is from our chat right now on the YouTubes. Are any players in our current pool making noise about fixture congestion? And at some point, will there be a breaking point? There's a lot of layers to that question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have not heard any players talking about fixture congestion, but you look at it, Tyler Adams, is that a problem or a symptom of too many matches? I know he's had that issue just because he works so hard and he runs all over the place, and maybe figuring out how to control the amount of space and the speed that he kind of occupies that space. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, Christian Pulisic is putting on miles on his legs right now, 26 years old, among the most impactful right now in Serie A, not only just with Milan, but in Serie A. It's good to see. I think he's on the right trajectory. Anthony Robinson has put a lot of miles on his legs, which is why you saw him not get called up to the last camp. They said, we want to give him the rest. But I feel like that's a global issue at the moment. And I guess the U.S. players, there hasn't been one that's been ultra vocal about it as of yet.
Well, we just had in world football, just before Rodri got hurt, didn't he just say that
Yes.
players are close to going on strike? And then I can't remember off the top of my head who backed him like a day later. And so from a global standpoint, as you mentioned, it's a massive, massive issue. And it's not getting any better, because the one thing FIFA sees, the one thing that UEFA sees, the one thing CONCACAF sees is money in the end. More games, more money, more television, more viewership, more everything. And there's only one group that pays the price, and that's the players, right? And ultimately, we see guys get hurt, and quite honestly, if you're FIFA, you're like, oh, they got another guy. People get hurt in this game. They got another guy. Let's just go play another game.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I wonder if we haven't heard from any American players because we don't necessarily have guys that are playing week in and week out, or they're even with clubs. I mean, Manchester City's an anomaly. Them, Madrid, and some others are playing the max games that you can play every season. But for most clubs, I don't know if it's as intense that they can come and fight me if they want. All right, so let's get into the next question. How do you expect Mauricio Pochettino's first game to go? Like score and tactics. And secondarily, will St. Louis pack the park at City Park on Monday for that match? I'll say this. They better pack that park, because I'm pretty sure that U.S. Soccer and others will be taking notes. You're not going to get any games unless you get the fans out for that. Now, we'll say, just make the tickets reasonable, and you're going to get a packed house every single time. If you're going to put out overpriced tickets, then you're going to have a crappy audience. And fair enough. I understand why the fans are doing that, and I would consider doing the same. And we have the benefit of usually getting credentials, so we don't necessarily suffer that way. But I would never. My family never comes with me because it's expensive, man. So St. Louis, I hope, packs it. I think they will. I think the prices are going to be manageable from what I've seen so far. That's where I'll go on that.
Kelly Broderick said tickets are only $30 right now.
That's
Beautiful.
perfect.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
That's where they should
money.
be.
That's music to my ears.
That should be max.
It could go two ways, right, Jimmy? I think the attitude and the hype and the energy is going to be high regardless. But it's either what Tony's been saying from the beginning. Pochettino comes, he's watching matches, and he calls up, someone like a Jordan Morris, where he calls up someone who everyone's like, this guy isn't at the level. But from what Pochettino says, he's like, I'm going to give XYZ player an opportunity. And maybe it's a new system, new demands, and it doesn't look great. It's, everyone's working hard, but the passing sequences, like the synergy between the lines just isn't there yet. Or he picks a team, he's watched the games, he's got a good idea of maybe introduces one or two different names, and they fly. And we're looking at a 3-0, 4-0 Panama smashing, and we go, we got our guy. I think it's one of two. It's one of two.
Yeah, Tones.
I
want to jump
choice
in.
B.
Yeah, same. I hope we're flying too. Yeah, I mean, we've already talked about it on this. We would like, or at least me and Tones would like to see a back three and maybe get out the wing backs a little bit. With no Serginho Dest, maybe it doesn't look the same. I'm curious to see who he brings in, and then obviously the formation will follow suit. But I'm with you, Chuck. I actually think the guys will be fine. They'll be ready to go. Everybody's going to want to be sharp. That's that first impression. And also against Panama, we got to get some revenge after they.
But it could still be disjointed. You know what I'm saying?
It can.
Everyone's
100%.
flying, but if guys are maybe out of position or feel like they're asked to do things out of their comfort zone, which is why you bring up Pochettino, because you want guys out of their comfort zone, and you're playing a different style, and there could be some that's a step off, or missing passes here or there. But ultimately, I think we're going to see a motivated team,
which is what we're all clamoring for in some capacity. Tones, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, they might be unorganized. I'd rather be a little bit unorganized and see guys that are flying around the field, kicking the crap at everything that moves, than a team that's unorganized and just kind of standing around, right? And kind of what we saw last window, if you will. I can't imagine that Pochettino's come. Just think if you guys were going in, this was your camp you were going to. I know what I would be thinking. Man, I got to do everything I can between now and then to be as sharp as possible, because we have a new manager who has no ties to anybody. There's no ties to U.S. soccer, that has a clean slate, if you will. I get the sense, guys, that the first roster call-up will be very similar to what we saw, because it's a safer bet to do that. If they have some time to go out and scout some guys, maybe in MLS, maybe other guys in Europe, they might bring one or two in. But I get the sense that that it'll be very similar. If it's changed, I would think that there's like somebody internally that had a lot of ideas, maybe Gooch, maybe somebody else that had a lot of ideas that maybe Greg and his staff didn't want to utilize. And they're like, you got to take a look at these guys. And Pochettino should look at everybody, right? He shouldn't close the door on anybody at the moment that's got national team experience, or someone that fits how he wants to play in any particular position, and then eventually make his decision, 6 months out and start rolling with that group. But don't be surprised by any names that come on those rosters for like the next 3 or 4 camps.
Yeah, I think it's really important with regard to team building. It's not always the most talented players that make the best 11. There's certain chemistry and certain types of player profiles that mesh well together to go out and get results. So we'll see what that ends up looking like. Very curious. I can't wait for that window. But we got our next break here. Call it what you want. When we come back, more questions that we're going to answer, because that's what we do here in your favorite Average Good podcast. Welcome back to Call It What You Want. I'm Jimmy alongside Chuck and Big Tones. And here we go. Next question. Tones, I'm coming to you first on this one. Why are there no East Coast venues for the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup? None. Now, we know the answer, But just to name these cities that are actually hosting, 14 stadiums will be hosting the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. We got AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, Austin, Q2. We have in Carson, Dignity Health. We have NRG, where Houston, but the Texans play. Shell Energy Stadium in Houston. A lot of Houston stadiums. SoFi, we got Las Vegas, Minneapolis, Phoenix, San Diego, San Jose, PayPal Park for the first-time host. Santa Clara, Levi's Stadium, City Park in St. Louis, and BC Place in Vancouver. Now, we know the answer is that the FIFA Club World Cup is happening, and they're going to get all the East Coast venues. So we got this CONCACAF versus FIFA fight, and a lot of eyeballs spread all over the place. I mean, what the hell is going on?
It's so good to see leading into the World Cup that FIFA and CONCACAF are working together to make this so refreshing. Jimmy, this Gold Cup is anti-East Coast discrimination. That's what it is right now.
Well, also you got a national team tournament versus a club tournament, and you're going to have players that might be wanting to do both, right? And that gets complicated because if let's say AC Milan is in the Club World Cup, I don't know if they can make it. I don't even know, but let's just use them as an example. They're going to want Pulisic to play in that, and we're going to want him to obviously play for us because these are meaningful games that we're not going to have too many more of those heading into the World Cup in 2026. It just gets complicated. Just saying, Tones. Go ahead.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, it's the Club World Cup. They're all East Coast, so there's only so many stadiums, right, that you can do this in. So I guess if you're on the East Coast, you got a good chance of going to see some Club World Cup. If you're in the Midwest all the way to the West Coast, you got a good chance of seeing national team play. So,
all right.
Yeah.
I know Chuck talked about this morning footy. Give us your recap, Chuck.
No, I'm not even. I've already got triggered. I'm good.
You got triggered on this show?
No, this morning, just talking on this topic because I feel that.
What triggered you?
Yeah, which part?
If the U.S. play in a Gold Cup, they should, because we've all been there. You travel across the country, so everyone can get a chance to watch the U.S. men's national team play, and that's how you inspire kids around the country. If you're telling me you're only playing in L.A. and you're only playing in Seattle, what does that do? That's terrible. And I get it's the travel, but that's the part of the business. You represent the United States. It's a big ass country. Got to fly all around so people can get a chance to watch. So that's my take, and I'm done.
Okay, he's done. Chuck's got to leave early too, so we're trying to get the short, concise answers from Chuck.
Chuck's been triggered since 8:30 this morning. He just rolling.
He's on a 24.
I don't know how I'm going to make it tonight. We got the EAFC launch party tonight in New York, and
that's right. I forgot to respond.
It goes till midnight.
My bad.
It's a blessing. Pray for me.
Yeah, praying for you.
Me and Ronaldinho. Gaucho.
Whoa, he's gonna be there.
All right, look at
you.
Clint.
Okay, big timer.
No, stop.
Okay, Chuck, I'm coming back to you on this. How do you feel about the idea of Patrick Vieira coaching at Atlanta United?
I like it. He was successful in Major League Soccer. I thought he did a great job with New York City FC. They had a great style. He brought in some good players, some good talent. I think it's a no-brainer because Atlanta, they haven't gotten things right for a long time. Ever since Tata Martino left, really, it's been a nosedive down. I mean, De Boer had won the Campeones Cup, the first one, but ultimately it's been a nosedive. So, especially in the last few years, they need a good coach who knows what he's doing, and I think Patrick Vieira will be a success in Atlanta.
All right, and then I'm going to come to you on this one, Big Tones. What steps do you think MLS needs to take to improve and be on par with the top European leagues, both in terms of skill and fan attendance? I don't know how much time this guy thinks we have for the podcast, but there's a lot of layers to that question.
You're talking about the fastest growing league in the world, right? And it's hard to deny that given the stadiums that we've built, the atmospheres that the league is built. From a player standpoint, you got to continue. I like the model. Me personally, I like it's funny you mentioned Atlanta. You go get the Almirones, the young players for $8 million, and then you bring them here and you bed them in, and they go. They're worth what was he, $24 million or something around there when he got sold. Like, I like that model. I have said since the late 90s when this league started, I prefer, and I know we need some superstars, but I prefer in general that a team says we just spent 5 million on some guy you never heard before, right? Instead, some guy we're gonna spend 10 million on that's gonna be gone in a year, right? That we know, everyone knows, and he's gonna play a year or two in the league, and then he's gone. He's not really invested in this league. I'd rather see those types of players come to the league, develop here, and see clubs make money and sell them off. We need those players too, but I need more of the other players than I need that.
All right, Chuck. So to build off of that, every time I look at the stats, it always gives me a chuckle. Who's leading in goals? Who's leading in assists? Especially in assists, there are no American players that are like consistent goal contributors, especially like in the playmaking area.
Are you saying in MLS?
Yeah, in MLS.
Yeah.
And so we go and search and try to find those players elsewhere, which is totally cool. I agree with Tones. I like the model. You go,
Jim,
find.
Don't start me here, man. We don't have enough time. I've been talking about this for years. You're gonna trigger me right now.
Jimmy, you say that, but also goal scoring.
I get that. Yeah, I added that in there. But
15 or what is Jordan Morris the first one that's closest to the top, and he's like 14. He's around 14 or 15 in the league, in terms of the amount of people in front of him. And then we're not. Do we have any Carlos Heels that are American in the league? Do we have any Lucho Costas? We don't. So
he's going to be naturalized soon. So don't.
Yeah, but who knows? That might be way too late at that point. But who knows? At this point, we need to develop more players like that. It just feels like there's a lot of players being developed, and they're cut. They're all taken from the same box. They all have typically the same type of style.
You ever go to a youth soccer game or youth soccer tournament? Walk around and listen to every parent go, pass the ball. We're never going to develop a dribbler in this country, ever. I feel like anytime a kid takes over the game, Jim, you're getting me triggered, bro. I'm telling you, I've been doing this for years and years and years. It drives me freaking bananas, man.
Go ahead, Tony. It's your turn. It's your turn.
Oh my gosh.
Go.
No, we don't have enough time. You got to roll. You got to go to like some
I got 2 minutes.
party or something.
I got 2 minutes. Get ahead.
We can't create. We can't create. We don't have creative players because everything in the training needs a cone. We got to go from here to here to here. I learned from Tab. I learned from Tab years ago. Take all the cones out of training. Like, develop it with cones, but take it out and see what you get. Let them know that they don't have to go right here. They might be going right here or right here. Not exactly right here all the time. And then you go to a game. I walk around tournaments, and this is higher end tournaments, right? Showcase tournaments for years and years, scouting players. I hear all the pass the ball. I'm like, kid's dribbling. He's dribbling like 10 guys. That's exactly what we need. No, pass the ball. He's a hog. I'm like, oh, this is driving me nuts. I got to leave. I can't do this anymore. Bro, you listen, I can't do it. I can't talk about this,
man.
He's
a hog.
He's a hog.
That's what you got, right?
Who does this Charlie Davies think he is?
He's a hog.
Pass the ball.
Yeah. I'm like, the one player I'm watching on the field, I'm like, man, that guy's pretty creative, man. He just flicked the ball over his head. Okay, it didn't work, but he had the imagination to do it. I'm like, and everybody's screaming at him. Like, I'm like, why? That's not the guy to scream at, you know? And I don't know, man. It drives me nuts. Anyway.
We got nobody who can break down somebody 1v1. You have Christian Pulisic right now.
Christian can do it.
And Timothy Weah is not afraid to run at players 1v1, but literally that, and Serginho Dest. That's another one. But literally,
but not cultivated here. He didn't grow up in our environment. Yeah.
All right, I love y'all.
All right, see you, Chuck.
Hey, go have fun.
Love.
Go tell Ronaldinho we said hi.
I will.
Tell him to hit like and subscribe. Yeah.
All right.
Drive safe, dude.
It didn't happen if you don't take pictures, man.
That's true. That's true.
Didn't happen.
So Big Tones, I think it's interesting. Is this a coaching? Is it a symptom of coaching in this country? Because it feels like we swung really hard to. We have more kids practicing than ever before.
Yeah,
I remember running a camp in my hometown. This is like 10 years ago, and I was peppering the kids that came with questions, like, how many times a week are you practicing? We're doing 4 days a week. I'm like, oh, great, cool. And then, okay, how many games on the weekend? Oh, we have game on Saturday, game on Sunday. Okay, wow, you're touching the ball 6 days a week. You're getting in game situations. And they said, okay, let's go back to the practices. How much of it are you getting to just play and think for yourself and make decisions for yourself? And how much of it is your coach instructing you what to do and every single thing? And they're like, well, the majority of we never really get to play and think for ourselves. And that said everything I need to know about how things were going at that particular point. Because we're not giving them, to your point, like giving them the creativity. Like, okay, you give them the tools, but then you got to back off and let them solve problems for themselves, right?
Yeah, and I had this rule when I coached, and my parents, I would say at the beginning of the year, you guys just became the biggest cheerleaders, right? You're no longer coaches, and do not, under any circumstance, talk to the player with the ball. I don't want you to talk to the player with the ball. It was one rule I had on my team, and if it happened, my assistant coach's name was Doug for years, and if I heard a parent, Doug, call him. Literally in the game, call a parent now, like on the other side of the field. I would, because in general, you start to get heated, and then you say one thing, and then you start getting heated, and you say another thing, and then it starts ramping up. I'm like, that's it. We got to end it now. You call the parent. I don't care who it is. Like, don't talk to the player. I want them to figure it out on their own. After the fact, I could go at halftime. Hey, maybe next time, so-and-so's running over there, you might have an option over there. But while the players have enough problems to think about when they have the ball, right? They don't need, but because by the time any parent notices, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, that play's already over, right? Like that play already happened. So now the kid's thinking like, oh man, so I had this rule, and I did this early with all three of my kids' teams that I coached. Don't talk to the player with the ball. And in general, it worked. And I used to tell them all the time, look, let me take care of the soccer stuff. You guys just be cheerleaders. And if you think I'm egregiously missing something along the way, then you let me know. You come talk to me. And I never had a problem coaching, but that was my rule. And I go to these tournaments, and I stand around and I listen. And I'm like, here's our problem, man. This is the root of our problem.
I agree with you. So is that a coaching thing though? Because if you have a coach that doesn't have to have 100%. Our playing experience, but if they're the one that are setting the tone, right, and the themes and laying the foundation for your particular team, no matter the age group, and the parents, and you're being transparent about what you're doing. Like when I coach, I tell the parents, hey, if a player's trying to play out of a tough situation, it's because I'm asking them to do it. So
sure.
I don't need any additional, to your point, I don't need you to be a coach. Just be essentially a cheerleader, and I'm really just looking for positivity. I don't need any negative commentary. And if I hear it, then I'll go talk to that parent afterwards. But this is what I'm asking the kids to do, because they need to figure out, like anybody can just get the ball and kick it. Like once the kids get to a certain age, they need to solve problems. And so if I was going to have a team where I was encouraging a couple players that had good dribbling, I would probably let the parents know that this is just a part of what we're trying to do. And this kid has a little something, a little creativity. And we want to make sure that we're nurturing that, as opposed to it only got 2 touch, I mean, and so I still think that's the coaching, where I think we have a lot of coaches here that want to get, but there's not a lot of good coaching education. A lot of these people can't afford to go get a B license or an A license, or don't have the time. Like, how do we get to those? And I know the NSCAA is trying to fill in some of those gaps that U.S. Soccer can't, because U.S. Soccer obviously is running a really professional coaching program, and I get that and respect it. But there's a lot of coaches that still need a little bit more, and they're not getting it.
Yeah, but we are a lot better. Just think of the players that we're developing and how many young kids are getting opportunities. And why do you think that is? Because this generation of coaches have played, right? So that cycle is getting better. When I grew up, not all the coaches played, right? And I know I'm a little bit older, but we needed those parents to coach, or else there would have been nobody there to coach the kids.
Right.
But now we're getting guys like you that are coaching, and it's great. Charlie's coaching, like all these guys that have played. And you don't have to have played at this level. I get not everybody's played at this level, but that cycle is getting better, and hopefully will continue to get better. I used to tell my parents all the time, I'm not coaching future national team players. I'm coaching future coaches. Hopefully these players will one day coach their kids, and that's how the cycle gets better. Hopefully they love the game enough after that their kids they're now coaching their kids, and that's how we're going to get better. and they're not the kids I coach are not old enough yet to have had kids, but I know my daughter, who's done playing college soccer, like she's going to have kids and coach her kids because she just loves the game. Right. So, but yeah, look, I loved my time coaching youth soccer. It was the parents that drove me absolutely bonkers, because, and not necessarily with my team, but in my clubs in general, because people let it happen. But yeah, I think we're getting better in those areas.
Yeah, we
are. Can I tell you my quick, you when you mention the license, it always kind of triggers me. Can I tell you my quick story with my license?
Triggered you twice in one show? I'm like,
no, I'm over it. It's kind of funny, but anyway, I was coaching the youth national teams with Tab for 5.5 years, and about 3 years into that cycle, the U.S. Soccer comes to me, like, we just revamped the A Pro license and all that stuff, the A license, and the senior A license, not the Pro. You couldn't do that unless you were coaching in the pro level. Like, you really need to take it. Like, we'd like for you to take it. I'm like, okay, great, sign me up. I'm all for it, right? Sign me up. And I'm like, this is cool. I'm living in New Jersey, but it's in Cary, North Carolina, and I got to go down there 4 times for like a week. You know how you do all of that, and then you have the periods in between. And I'm like, this is great. I told my wife, U.S. Soccer, I'm going to do the coaching license. And boom, $5,500 bill shows up at my door. I'm like, so I'm really not any different than anyone else. Like, I got to pay for my hotel. Just funny when I think about it. I'm like, they begged me to do it. And then they're like, I thought like, okay, well, maybe I'll get a break, but no.
Yeah, because you played like 100 times for the U.S.
Not one break at all. But anyway, I loved every second of it. Believe me, the people down there were great. I loved every second of it, and
I can see why that would trigger you.
Yeah, I got some guys from that course. I've been able to help get jobs, even up to MLS Next Pro over the years. So it's been that's been pretty gratifying, man.
Yeah. One of the things that gets me triggered, and I have had to pay for my coaching courses as well. So you're not alone there, Tones, or anybody else.
But they begged me. I didn't want to do it. It's like they asked me to do it. It was like, anyway.
That makes it even better.
Yeah.
But one of the things that just overall, and I know we can continue this conversation for another hour, and maybe people would want to tune in and listen, but we'll keep it relatively short, is what I don't think we do a very good job of in this country. And for people that are around me, I talk about it a lot, but there's that stat that I saw, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, that's really kind of changed my perspective on what I want to do and how I want to coach, is that in a professional game, a 90-minute game, a professional player will touch the ball on average of 2 to 3 minutes. If you think about youth players, they probably touch it even less because they don't have the same type of control or ball mastery as a professional does. So they're not in and around the ball as much. But that's really all I see when I go to these trainings in and around my area in particular. It's a lot of technical stuff, which is fine. That's important. It's got to be a component of it. But the kids don't really learn situational and spatial awareness until they get out and play games. And when games come, everything's just different. You got coach probably yelling things that they haven't yelled before because that they're trying to win, and the stress and pressure is a little bit different. You got parents are there, so that heightens the expectation, the pressure that the kids are feeling. And now you're playing against kids you've never played before, so they're asking questions of you that maybe you haven't had to solve. And we really struggle, and I see it at all levels in this country, with spatial and situational awareness. Not 1 or 2 players might have it, but it's that sense of, okay, we have 5 players that got the ball and we want to go. Okay, but the other 5 players, man, it's a good time to catch a breath. It's like understanding the nonverbal cues that are happening within your team at any given moment. And maybe at that 5 that do go forward, it's a numerical advantage, right? They identify it's a 5 versus 4, 5 versus 3, and it's time to go. No problem. But those little understandings, I don't think they get reinforced enough, at least at the levels that I think they should be. When I see the kids that are maybe 14, 15 now, I feel like they should already be equipped with that, and they're not. And that's what kind of frustrates me, is that it's like we're hitting some of the development phases too late for some of our players. And it's sad, because if they had been equipped with that 3 or 4 years before, then maybe they would have been a lot farther along and maybe enjoyed the game in a different way, because they had more tools in their tool belt to understand what to do in certain situations, which includes potentially dribbling at somebody in a 1v1 situation when it makes the most sense to run at somebody and show off your creativity. Anyway, thanks for having me, everybody.
Yeah, look, I was from a young age. I didn't wait until we got to 11v11. I was big on tactics, man. Being in the right place, because I have this thing in my head. I used to talk to my assistant coaches about it all the time. I'm like, you could be great with the ball, but if you're in the wrong place all the time, doesn't really matter, right? You're never going to get it, or you're not going to be around it. Like, you got to learn everything, and we are very ball happy with regards to technique and all of that stuff. We're big on that, and it's important. There's no doubt about it. But I think inherently, if you're doing it enough, you're inherently getting better at it, right? Because you're still with the ball every day. Sure, at the young age, I got great advice from Bob Bradley one time. His nephew was on my team, so Bob used to come. Jeff Bradley's, Jeff, right? His sons were both on my team. Well, his older one was. The younger one just trained. I let him train with me all the time. And Bob Bradley said to me one day at the training, we were talking about the beginning of the season, and I couldn't figure out, where everybody fit in. And he said to me, "How about you just roll the ball out and see where everybody goes?" Right? See where everyone kind of gravitates to. Just let them play. Just let them play open play. And that's what I did. Let them play open play. And all of a sudden you start to see, like, that guy, he prefers the right, or that guy, he prefers, in the center of defense. Like, then it started to figure itself out. And then you'd get the guy who was all over. And I'm like, okay, that might be your number 10, because he likes to go find the game all over the place, But it was really just like simple advice like that. I really think, Jimmy, and I've said this, I've said it this way because I don't know of another way to say it. And we have so many guys doing a lot of work in our country on the coaching side, but I think in a lot of ways we complicate it too much, right? We make it too complicated. We want to do more where sometimes less is more, right? Where, because we want to do so much and we want to show what we know and how impactful we can be on each one of these players, we're taking away from what they really love to do or what they think is the right thing. That's why the thing for me, not talking to the person with the ball, was so big, because that's the only way you find out how they're thinking about the game, right? In the beginning of my season, my teams were my daughter's team. The last team was Milan, but in the beginning of all my seasons, we picked a name. I never allowed them to pick Sand Sharks or whatever. Like, you could be Milan something. And my daughter's team was Milan. So every week someone had the assignment of bringing in something to talk about for Milan, right? And the girl, if you went to the girls on my team, they'd have to watch like highlights of a game or just say who scored, like something simple. You could have looked on Google and they would come in, and I still have those somewhere in some of these boxes back here that I haven't unpacked for years. I have literally written down what they all said because I just thought it's important. Like, we don't get enough of it in this country, and I think some, kids just don't do enough of that stuff. But I can talk about this stuff forever, man. I love this stuff. I know. Can talk about it forever.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, and then we'll let everybody go. I'm sure maybe you want us to answer more questions. We'll have another mailbag episode in the future. One of the things that I've seen when I've coached USL League 2, right? So I'm around a lot of the top D1 athletes in the area. And hey, guys, you watch the Champions League game, or, try to talk to them about whatever, Real Madrid or Bayern Munich or whoever was playing that particular day. And they're like, no, what happened? Like, they weren't, a lot of them just don't watch. They're not students of the game. And so I love what you're doing, because even though you're not necessarily asking your girls to know the X's and O's of what formation Milan's playing, you're in some way, you're helping them understand the culture and one, that it matters, and then second, introducing them to this whole world of awesome that is the beautiful game by going through the gateway of Milan. So we went to a Bay FC game. I took my youngest daughter's team to the Bay FC game when they played Barcelona, right? So you have Bonmati and Puteas, and it was awesome, right? Lots of goals. But in that first half, I gave them a sheet where they had to fill out which player are you watching? Which player are you watching? What kind of decisions are they making with the ball? How are they supporting the ball? Right? I give them options or whatever. And then the last question is there anything that they're doing that you can't do? And because I want them to be able to link that. And so all they said at the end was, we can do everything that they're doing. They just do it quicker than us. And I think that was a really big important component to it, right? And even that, just trying to make them I wanted them just to watch the game. I just said, listen, give me 10 minutes of your time, pick one player and watch that player. And then here are the questions that you have to, they loved it. And it was a really cool experience to go down there. But like, if we can make all the coaches that are listening, if you can make your kids and your players students of the game, no matter what age, ultimately, you're going to end up having a more well-rounded player. So that's it. I'm going to leave it on
make
that.
It fun. Like make it something fun.
True.
Yeah, because if you don't make it fun, it's never going to work, right?
Yeah. Well, I could talk about this for a long time.
Oh,
all right, that's
yeah,
it. That's the show. We're ending it here. Call What You Want is done. Thank you for hanging out with us. As always, we'll be back with you guys on Monday. That will be at 1 p.m. Eastern on Golasso America's YouTube channel, and that's 10 a.m. Pacific, which is where I am on the West Coast. West Coast getting all the action with the Gold Cup game. Shout out to the Best Coast. Anyway, sorry, we're getting back into the show. The show's over. The show is done. Thank you for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next week. Have a good weekend. Later.